Harry Sonneborn, the former president and CEO of McDonald's, once described the company's business model in terms that most people would find surprising. "We are not technically in the food business," he said. "We are in the real estate business. The only reason we sell 15-cent hamburgers is because they are the greatest producer of revenue from which our tenants can pay us our rent." That statement was not rhetorical. It was a precise description of how one of the world's most recognized companies actually generates its profit, and McDonald's is not unique in this regard. Across industries and decades, a consistent pattern appears in how major companies are structured. The product or service that carries the brand name is rarely the primary source of profit. The actual business tends to operate one level removed from what consumers see. King Camp Gillette arrived at this logic in 1891. He was a traveling salesman with an interest in invention, and his mentor, William Painter, had built a fortune on the disposable bottle cap. Painter's advice to Gillette was straightforward. Create something that gets used once and thrown away so that every customer becomes a source of recurring revenue. Gillette applied that principle to shaving in 1895. He imagined a razor handle paired with inexpensive blades that could be replaced rather than resharpened. The handle was the entry point. The blade was the revenue stream. When the United States entered World War I in 1917, the government paid Gillette to equip every American soldier with a field razor set. By the end of the war, 3.5 million razors had been issued. Millions of men returned home already accustomed to using Gillette blades. The customer acquisition had been funded by someone else entirely. That structure of selling the durable item at low margin and profiting indefinitely from the consumable has since been replicated across printers and ink cartridges, coffee machines and pods, game consoles and software, and dozens of other product categories. It is over a century old, and it is still the template. McDonald's built its business on a version of the same logic, applied to real estate rather than consumables. The company operates more than 40,000 restaurants worldwide. As of 2024, roughly 95% of those restaurants are run by franchisees. McDonald's does not operate those kitchens. What it does is own or hold long-term leases on the land and buildings beneath nearly all of them. It then subleases that property to franchisees, charging rent calculated as a percentage of their sales. The financial structure that results from this arrangement is what makes the model worth understanding. Franchise fees and rent carry operating margins above 80%. Directly operated restaurants run at margins closer to 15%. The locations that McDonald's runs itself generate a fraction of operating profit compared to the franchised and leased portfolio. McDonald's is structured as a real estate and licensing enterprise. The restaurants are, in Sonneborn's framing, the mechanism by which tenants generate enough revenue to pay rent. Amazon presents a similar structure, though the separation between visible business and profit engine is more pronounced. The company is broadly understood as the world's largest online retailer. Its retail operations, however, function on margins that are thin by design. The division that drives its profitability is Amazon Web Services, known as AWS, a cloud computing platform that Amazon originally built to support its own internal operations and began offering to outside customers in 2006. AWS represents roughly 15% of Amazon's total revenue, but it generates the overwhelming share of the company's actual profit. Retail operates on margins so thin that most of that revenue disappears into costs. AWS keeps most of what it earns. In 2024, Amazon's total operating profit across every division, retail, advertising, everything, came to $68 billion. AWS alone was responsible for $39 billion of that. Out of everything Amazon sells, one division generated more than half the company's profit. The retail platform that most people associate with the company functions, in part, as the customer base from which the cloud business grew. Google and Meta operate on a variation of this model in which the revenue source is not a secondary product, but a secondary customer. Google Search is free to use. YouTube is free. Gmail, Maps, and Android are free. The users of these services do not pay for them. Advertisers do. The same is true of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. In both cases, the users are not the source of revenue. They are the asset being sold. Advertisers pay for access to those users' attention and behavioral data. In 2024 alone, Google made over $264 billion from advertising, none of it paid by the users themselves. The scale of the free product determines the value of what is sold to the paying customer. Apple has spent decades being understood as a hardware company. That understanding is becoming incomplete. The iPhone still accounts for more than half of Apple's total revenue. But look at what Apple actually keeps. For every dollar made from hardware, Apple keeps about 36 cents. For every dollar made from services, the App Store, iCloud, Apple Music, Apple Pay, it keeps over 70 cents. Services run at nearly double the margin of hardware. The services segment crossed $100 billion in annual revenue in 2024. That number took less than a decade to build. It now generates more profit per dollar than any physical product Apple makes. The iPhone puts a device in your hand. The device puts you inside an ecosystem. The ecosystem is where Apple makes its real money. The hardware is the door. Everything behind it is the business. Costco operates a structurally similar model, built around access fees rather than a digital ecosystem. Costco prices its merchandise with deliberately thin margins. The low prices attract and retain members. Members pay an annual fee to shop there. Unlike merchandise sales, membership fees carry almost no associated costs. No inventory, no logistics, no spoilage. Costco collects the fee and keeps nearly all of it. That is why a fee that represents a small fraction of total revenue can account for the majority of total profit. The merchandise exists to make the membership worth renewing. The membership is what actually makes the business work. Renewal rates of approximately 90% suggest that it does. Across these companies, the structure is consistent. The brand-facing product or service operates at scale, often at low margin or no direct charge to the user. The actual source of sustained profit is a layer removed. A cloud platform, a real estate portfolio, a services subscription, an advertising auction, or an access fee. Gillette's razor handle and McDonald's restaurant locations function the same way that Google Search and Costco's warehouse shelves do. Each creates the conditions under which a more durable, higher margin revenue stream becomes possible. The pattern predates the internet by more than a century. What changes across industries is the surface on which it is applied. The underlying logic has remained constant since William Painter advised a traveling salesman to build something that keeps customers coming back.